You ever wonder why you're seeing this right now? Not a week ago. Not years from now. Right now. It's like life has this quiet precision, showing you what you need the moment you stop pretending you're fine without it. You go through the motions, right? Same morning routine. Same anxious thoughts looping like a tired song. Same heavy silence in rooms where your laughter used to live. It's like something inside you is knocking. But you've been too polite to open the door, and then one day, something shifts. It doesn't come crashing in. No sirens, no applause. Just a breath, a pause in the noise where you feel something different. Not louder, just clearer. It's like dawn rising without asking for your permission. Like the first warm light after years of walking in dimness, mistaking it for day. And you realize, maybe you've been waiting for something that was never outside of you to begin with. Most people don't live. They perform. They walk through their days like background characters in their own story, saying yes when their chest is full of no, smiling when they feel like screaming, apologizing for things they didn't break, and shrinking just enough to fit someone else's comfort zone. You can almost hear it, can't you? That echo in your own life where you keep waiting for someone to nod, to tell you it's finally your turn, that you're allowed to want more, that you can stop pretending, that you can be whatever it is you've buried under politeness, fear, or survival. But the truth is, the world doesn't hand out permission slips. It hands you mirror situations that reflect what you've been refusing to face. And what's brutal, yet beautiful, is this. The longer you live by someone else's script, the further you drift from the sound of your own voice. That voice, the one that whispered to you in the dark when no one was watching, it's still there, just quiet from being ignored for so long. And maybe that's what brought you here. Not because this video is special, not because I have some secret to give you, but because there's a part of you that already knows something has to change, and it's tired of waiting for the world to agree. Think about it. When was the last time you made a decision that wasn't filtered through someone else's expectations? When did you last let yourself speak the truth? Not the version that keeps things smooth, but the raw, trembling kind that risks being misunderstood. When did you last say, "This is what I want," and not shrink it down to something more digestible? If those questions feel hard to answer, that silence you feel inside, that hesitation, that's not confusion, that's recognition. It's the sound of you bumping into yourself, your real self, after years of playing roles you didn't audition for. And yeah, that realization can feel like a free fall, but also liberating. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You begin to notice the difference between people who are just reacting to life and those who seem untouchable, not cold, not arrogant, just grounded, unshakable. Like they've found some inner gravity that keeps them centered even when the world spins sideways. But it's not luck. They're not born with some hidden manual or magical immunity to chaos. They just stopped trying to control what was never theirs to control. Most people waste their life trying to manage other people's reactions. They rehearse conversations in their head, edit themselves, in real time obsess over tone and timing, and how to be likable enough to not get abandoned. They turn their days into performances, adjusting their volume, posture, emotions just to stay palatable. And in doing that, they forget there's a person behind the curtain, a whole human, longing to breathe without calculating the cost. But what if you stepped off the stage? What if you stopped auditioning for roles that only reward your silence? What if rejection isn't something to avoid, but something that frees you from places you never belonged? I'm not saying you should burn it all down. This isn't about becoming cold, cruel, or untouchable. It's not about swinging from people-pleasing to self-righteous isolation. It's about something quieter, more sacred, reclaiming your right to exist exactly as you are, without apology, without performance, without the need to soften your truth for someone else's comfort. That's not rebellion. That's homecoming. Because the truth is, the world conditions you to think that being liked equals being worthy. That if you're agreeable enough, kind enough, quiet enough, you'll be safe. But what they call safe often means invisible. And shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's version of acceptable is not safety. It's self-abandonment dressed as diplomacy. Silence in the face of injustice isn't wisdom. It's complicity. Being easy to like isn't the same as being true. And the ones who seem unbothered, who move through life without selling their soul for acceptance, they've learned that peace of mind is not a group project, that their energy is sacred, and that every no they whisper to others is really a yes to themselves. But it doesn't happen all at once. It's not a mountaintop moment. It's not lightning striking. It's daily, messy, slow. It's 1,000 quiet decisions to pause instead of react, to walk away instead of over-explain, to stop giving your emotional paycheck to people who haven't earned your time. Think about the last time someone poked at your soft spots, tried to get a rise out of you. Did you flinch? Did you spend hours replaying what you could have said differently? Or did you let it pass through you like a breeze that wasn't yours to hold? That difference, that's where your power lives, not in your ability to change their behavior, but in your decision not to let their chaos live rent-free inside your mind. Power isn't loud. It's not about having the last word. It's about being so deeply anchored in who you are that you no longer seek shelter in someone else's approval. And maybe that's the shift already happening in you now. That's why you're still listening. Because something in this, some part of this, is ringing true. Not because it's new, but because it's familiar. Like a voice you forgot was yours. There's something sacred about that moment, when the old voice inside you grows louder than the noise outside you. Not aggressive, not boastful, just steady, like a drumbeat calling you back to yourself. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you're not chasing clarity in the opinions of others. You're not waiting for signs or applause, or someone to finally say, yes, you're allowed. Because the truth, you were always allowed. You just forgot. Forgot that your energy isn't infinite. Forgot that your peace was never meant to be sacrificed on the altar of being understood. And somewhere along the way, you started to notice how much time you've spent handing out little pieces of yourself to strangers on the internet, to coworkers with loud opinions, to family members who never once asked how you're really doing. They don't even have to say much. Sometimes all it takes is a tone, a look, a pause in a text reply. And suddenly you're spiraling, wondering if you said too much, asked for too much, existed too loudly. But what if you didn't? What if none of it was ever about you? What if their silence, their rejection, their resistance was just a reflection of their own discomfort? What if your growth made them face their stagnation? See, most people don't know how to handle someone who stopped asking for permission. Because when you stop shrinking, you mess up their balance. When you stop nodding along, you disrupt the script. And the ones who've grown comfortable with the old version of you, they'll call your clarity arrogance. They'll label your boundaries as betrayal. Not because you're wrong, but because your freedom makes them feel caged. And still you keep going, because there's something more painful than disappointing others. It's disappointing yourself, not in some perfectionist way, not in that loud, critical, never good enough voice, but in that quiet ache that comes from knowing you betrayed your own gut instinct. That feeling when you hear yourself say yes to something that feels like a no in your chest and then live with the weight of it afterward. That's the real betrayal. Not what others do to you, but what you do to stay tolerated, but not anymore. That version of you, the one who needed constant reassurance, the one who twisted into shapes just to be accepted, it's tired, not bitter, not broken, just done. Done pretending, done dimming, done asking for space in a world you were born to belong in. And so you begin again. From within, you start noticing the quiet truths that used to scare you. You start noticing how often you talk yourself out of your own knowing. You start noticing where you give away your power for love, for approval, for temporary peace. And it changes you, not all at once, but moment by moment. You begin choosing discomfort over dishonesty, silence over performance, stillness over chasing. You start understanding that not every emotion requires a reaction. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every person is meant to walk with you into your next season. And yes, that hurts. It hurts when people leave. It hurts when they don't understand. It hurts when your growth creates distance. But the pain of honesty is so much cleaner than the pain of betrayal, especially when the betrayal is self-inflicted. Because now, for once, you're choosing you. And it's strange at first being with yourself in this way, learning what you actually want. Not what sounds impressive, not what makes your parents proud, not what gets you applause, but what you want when no one is watching. You start tuning in to those moments of peace, those places where your nervous system relaxes, those people who don't require you to shapeshift just to keep the vibe good. That's when you know you're living from the inside out, no longer outsourcing your identity to other people's expectations, no longer seeking wholeness in half-hearted love, no longer performing a version of you that's safe for everyone else. And you begin to see the ripple effect. Your work feels different, not because it's more successful, but because it feels like you're finally telling the truth. Your relationships feel different, not because everyone stays, but because the ones who do, they see you. Not your mask, not your hustle. You. And the decisions, they get quieter, simpler, clearer, because you're no longer pulled in 100 directions. You know your center now. You're no longer living in response. You're living from choice. That's the power of authenticity. It's not flashy. It doesn't shout. It hums like a tuning fork that vibrates through everything you do. And the more you honor it, the more life starts meeting you there. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but honestly. You stop needing things to go your way just to feel okay. You stop chasing outcomes as if they're the measure of your worth, because you already know who you are. That kind of self-trust, it's rare, and the world will try to shake it. People will still question you, tempt you, try to pull you back into roles you've outgrown. But once you've tasted real peace, the kind that comes from inner alignment, chaos starts to feel like noise. The kind you no longer wish to dance to. So, when the old patterns come knocking, because they will, you'll pause, you'll breathe, and instead of reacting, you'll remember you are no longer the version of you who needed to be liked at the cost of your soul. You are no longer the one who says yes just to keep the peace. You are no longer the echo of other people's expectations. You are something more now, and the world doesn't have to understand it because you do. Something happens when you stop performing. It doesn't feel dramatic at first. It's not a firework moment. or a thunderclap revelation. It's quieter than that, like something deep within you finally exhales, because for so long you were holding your breath, trying not to be too much, too loud, too sensitive, too opinionated, too real. And when you stop doing that, when you finally let yourself breathe again, you begin to notice how unnatural the mask had become. It was never really yours. You just learned to wear it well. But taking it off, that's when everything starts to shift. People begin reacting to you differently. Some lean in. They see your clarity and feel invited to rise into their own. They admire your boundaries, even if they don't say it out loud. They feel your stillness and realize it comes from a place they've always been searching for. But others, they pull back, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence reminds them of everything they've been avoiding. Your truth sounds like noise to those who've built a life around denial. And your peace looks like rebellion to those who only know chaos. It's not personal, it's projection. They're not fighting you. They're fighting what your freedom reveals about their own fear. And yet, you'll still feel it. That ache, that sting, the temptation to go back, to be easier, softer, smaller, to say, no, it's okay. I'll shrink again if it means you'll stay. But something inside you stops you now. Because you remember how that felt. The erosion, the exhaustion, the quiet heartbreak of making yourself less just to be loved more. You don't want that anymore. You want real. Even if real is lonelier at first. Even if real comes with growing pains and silent dinners and awkward, you've changed comments from people who never really saw you to begin with. You want the kind of life that fits your soul, not your mask. So you keep going, even when it's uncomfortable, even when your old habits try to drag you back into the familiar rhythm of apology and performance. And that's where the real power begins to grow, not in how loud you are, but in how anchored you've become. Because when you stop outsourcing your worth to people who haven't done the work to understand you, you reclaim energy that was never meant to be spent begging. You stop walking into rooms and scanning for cues. You stop editing yourself mid-sentence just to keep things easy. You stop bracing for impact every time you speak your truth. Instead, you begin to trust silence. You begin to honor the pause. You begin to say, this is me, even if the room doesn't clap. And that's liberation. It's the kind that no applause can buy. It's the kind that comes from knowing deep in your bones that you finally come home to yourself. You become more selective, not because you're arrogant, but because you finally stopped confusing access with love. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your growth. Not everyone is meant to walk with you past the version of yourself they were comfortable with. And that's okay. Let them go. Let the relationships shift. Let the silence settle. Let the empty space feel empty for a while, because soon it won't be empty. It'll be full of truth, of resonance, of people and places that meet you where you really are not where you pretended to be. And the ones who remain, they're different. They're the ones who can sit with the real you, unfiltered, unpolished, unedited, and not flinch. The ones who don't need you to dim in order to feel seen. The ones who love your clarity even when it challenges them. Those connections feel sacred. There's less noise, less second guessing, less needing to explain why you're not the same as you used to be, because they already see it. And they don't need a reason to accept it. They just do. But the most profound relationship, the one that surprises you the most, is the one you start to build with yourself. That's the one that changes everything. Because when you stop performing for the world, you finally have the time, the space, the energy to listen to what you want, not what sounds good, not what's safe, but what truly stirs something alive inside of you. You begin to ask yourself different questions. What do I love? That has nothing to do with achievement. What brings me peace? That has nothing to do with performance. What kind of life would I build if I stopped trying to prove anything? And the answers, they don't come all at once, but they come in still moments, in deep breaths, in mornings when you no longer wake up with that familiar dread, in choices that feel lighter, in boundaries that no longer require justification, and slowly your life begins to align. It doesn't mean it becomes easy, but it becomes yours, and that makes all the difference, because now, even when things are hard, even when the doubts creep back in, even when the old patterns whisper seductive things, you don't abandon yourself, not like before. You stay, you listen, you hold yourself the way you once hoped others would, and in doing so, you discover a kind of peace that isn't conditional. It's not based on how others see you. It's not dependent on your circumstances. It's rooted in your own integrity, in your own knowing, in your own breath. You realize you don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You don't need to be understood to be valid. You don't need to be chosen to be enough. You already are, right now, right here. Even in the mess, even in the becoming, even in the quiet, trembling steps towards something more honest. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're not broken. You're awakening. And the world may not always welcome that. But your soul, it's been waiting. It's strange, isn't it? How long we wait for something outside of us to say now. Now you can begin. We wait for the timing to feel right, for the fear to be gone, for the wounds to heal before we take a single step forward. But the truth is, the moment doesn't arrive. You arrive to it. The shift doesn't come wrapped in clarity and confidence. It comes when you're still afraid, still uncertain, still wobbling. And you take the step anyway. That's what readiness really looks like. Not perfection, not certainty, but courage wrapped in doubt. Movement despite hesitation. Because waiting to feel brave before you begin, that's a trap. You'll wait forever, but trusting that there's something inside of you worth honoring. That's the beginning of everything. You start showing up differently. You start walking into rooms not to be liked, but to be real. You stop trying to impress people who haven't even taken the time to understand themselves. You stop over-explaining your joy, your pain, your boundaries, because now you understand something simple and sacred. You don't owe anyone a performance. Your existence is not a negotiation. Your emotions are not a burden. Your truth is not too much. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people. And once you see that, clearly, there's a grief that comes for the years spent molding yourself into a version that never felt quite right. For the friendships that only survived because you stayed quiet. For the love you begged for when you should have been walking away. But there's also relief, a release, because you don't have to do that anymore. Not ever again. You can say no now. You can choose rest. You can trust your own timing. You can give yourself permission to be a work in progress. Not something broken, not something to fix, but something unfolding. You start measuring your growth differently. Not by how loud your life looks, but by how quiet your mind feels. Not by what you achieve, but by what you no longer tolerate. Not by how many people surround you, but by how deeply you connect with the few who see you. This is what alignment looks like. It's not aesthetic. It's not always pretty. but it's peaceful and it's powerful. You begin to trust the moments that used to terrify you. Rejection doesn't crush you anymore. It redirects you. Loneliness doesn't destroy you. It clears space. Silence doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like home and your authenticity. It becomes less about proving and more about being. Less about defending and more about embodying. You don't explain why you've changed. You live it, and the world begins to respond. Not instantly, not always gently, but truthfully. Some people fade out of your life, and you let them. Some relationships end, and you grieve. But what rises in their place is real, rooted, rare. You start attracting people who aren't confused by your light, who don't flinch when you set a boundary, who don't panic when you say, "That doesn't feel right to me." You stop searching for a tribe and start becoming your own. And from that place of grounded sovereign clarity, you begin to create. Not just art, or work, or output, but a life. One that feels true from the inside out. One that honors your pace, your pain, your process. One that doesn't require you to abandon yourself in order to belong. And what's wild is, when you stop trying so hard to be lovable, you become magnetic. Because authenticity isn't just rare, it's irresistible. People are drawn to it, to your presence, to your calm, to your no longer needing them to validate you in order to feel whole. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop begging and start becoming. And in that becoming, you realize you were never behind. You were never late. You weren't lost. You were unfolding. Everything that didn't work out, it wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Every no was a redirection. Every closed door was protection. Every season of loneliness was sacred pruning. And now, you see it, not just with your eyes, but with your heart. You see how all the mess shaped your clarity. How all the loss made space for truth. How all the silence gave birth to your real voice. And that voice, it's rising now. No longer whispering, no longer waiting. It's saying, you don't need to hustle for your worth. You don't need to earn rest. You don't need to earn love. You are worthy, even when you're quiet. You are enough, even when you're still. You are allowed to take up space unapologetically, wholly fiercely. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are just now remembering who you were before the world taught you to doubt it. So let the old stories fall away. Let the roles dissolve. Let the masks melt in the warmth of your returning. Because this is your becoming, not into someone new, but back into someone true. You're not starting over. You're coming home. And the message you've been waiting for, it was never out there. It's always been rising from within. You're ready now, not because the world told you so, but because you finally believe it. And that changes everything.